I wish Mica would have called me. When we first heard about the Mica Miller case, it was right after they had found her dead of alleged suicide. And so I'm sitting on my back porch on a Sunday morning, and I'm drinking my coffee, and I have this morning time before the kids get up and Justin, and just sit there and scroll TikToks and read the news and all that stuff. And I started watching these sermons that her husband had done at his church, and he was saying all these things in these sermons that were demeaning to women and demeaning to her. And I just kept seeing all these women, or all these parishioners, all these people in the congregation, some of them were laughing, some of them were nodding their head, and I just keep, no one's saying or doing anything. Nobody's getting up and leaving and saying, or right, WTF, whatever, And it made me so sad, because as someone who loves Jesus as much as, I love him more than anybody, and I'm a follower of Christ and a Christian, when I see people use that power in such a way, it just absolutely makes my skin crawl. It makes me sick to my stomach. And what I realized is anytime you see, when you see a church preaching that women don't really have a place, that they are second-class citizens, that's not the Bible talking, and that's not Jesus talking, that's man. And you have to run from that. And so the more I kind of deep dove into the Mica Miller case, she had all these women in her congregation that really supported her, but no one really felt like they had any power to help her. Yep. And so nobody did anything. And now she's gone. Mm-hmm. And she was this beautiful little woman who deserves so much better. And so what we've learned through all these news and allegations, these news articles and these allegations and witnesses coming forward, is that she endured a life that was really makes you sick to your stomach. Her friends have alleged that her husband, started grooming her. If she said that he had started grooming her when she was 15 years old. That was in a police report that we saw. He was
14 even, I think.
Yeah, she was, working in, that she was his babysitter and was in the youth group at church. Mm-hmm. And then we heard, these allegations and reports that he was from what I understand, there's a journal that he was sexually abusing her.
Yeah.
And just totally dehumanizing her mm-hmm. with the kind of abuse that she was enduring. And then on top of that, he was telling everybody she was crazy. Yeah. That's the ultimate gaslight, right? That's what we always see when we see those power differentiate, or traditional wives that stay at home, and then all of a sudden they've got an abusive situation going on. Oh, she's crazy. That's the first thing men go to when they break up with somebody, right?
She's too much.
And then we go back and we look at his sermons, and he was saying it in his sermons, and he was trying to get her committed.
Yeah.
Because if she's crazy, nobody will believe, this allegation that he is picking up homeless men and having them sexually degrade her for his own pleasure. Because if she's crazy, they won't believe that he's picking up prostitutes and making her have sex with them and him have, because if she's crazy, nobody will believe her.
Yeah.
And so,
well, and just to give, a brief overview, say someone doesn't know about this Mica Miller story. I mean, it is huge. This is local. It's happening right now in our city in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, and it has exploded nationwide, worldwide. Mm-hmm. Everybody is just so invested in this story going on right now. So Mica Miller was married to J.P. Miller, John Paul, who is a pastor of a local church, and she died, and it came back that it's an alleged suicide. And but all of these things are coming out about John Paul and his abuse with her, abuse from other women, and also just history of a very illegal tangled web of family history of himself. And so right now we are all kind of down the rabbit hole, as they say, of getting all of these new details in this very strange story that's happening. Shocking. And a lot of people are like, well, here's the new Murdaugh, I mean, it's just, it's amazing to do the things.
I would, I'll take the murder. I think that Murdoch, as horrible and horrific as the shit that he did, Alec Murdoch, it's nothing
like this. I agree.
It's nothing compared to what we've heard in the allegations of J.P. Miller and the death of Mica Miller.
So I want to,
Alec Murdoch was committing crimes, but
he was stealing people's money, but he was really loving and wonderful to his wife until he killed her.
Yeah,
from what I understand,
allegedly. So,
I don't know. He was convicted.
With Mica, though, it's a heartbreaking story, and I actually knew Mica, but I want to be transparent about our relationship. We were not close. She was an acquaintance of mine. I knew her from her stepfather, who was very involved in. I do a lot of salsa dancing, and he was involved in the salsa dance world. But I knew him. He brought her out a few times along with her siblings, and met her through that. And then years later, we kept kind of passing each other. So we would say hi. Literally 2 weeks prior to her dying, I spoke to her in church, a different church. She came to my church, and we were all leaving. It was dismissed. She called me out. Hey, Rainey. So we talked for a second. She was just full of life, super positive, full of joy, confident, all the things. And then literally less than 2 weeks later, I saw another friend of ours post up, I can't believe this news, and I found out that way through a Facebook story. So for me, it's even, it hits another like weird point for me, because I just spoke to her. I knew her, not super close, because I don't want everybody thinking like, oh, well, what was she like for this and what was she like for that? I don't want to give the wrong impression that I knew her like deepest, darkest secrets, but to just see her in person, like to know somebody in person and then have all this going on is very strange for me. Yeah, very strange.
And then to learn like these intimate details of her life.
Yeah, and I still know people who go to that church, Solid Rock, that John Paul's the pastor of, or was the pastor of. So that is weird for me. John Paul he officiated a lot of weddings that my husband and I went to. Him and Mica came for a private lesson with us one time. And that was a weird experience. So it's just, when you have the faces and the personal experiences with these people, it's even just a weirder, thing with all this happening. It just kind of blows your mind even more.
Silence. You posted on Facebook about it. That's what made me was like, well, let me Google.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the first thing I end up seeing was I see the thing saying, that she had allegedly committed suicide. But then I saw someone else's post that had the video footage of his sermon the day after she passed. And I didn't watch, it wasn't the whole sermon. It was just the end portion of the sermon where he is releasing the church and telling them, I've got this news to share with you. And when I say it to you, I want y'all to just leave. Don't have any questions. Let's not talk about it, but still keep coming to church, still keep contributing to the church. I don't know how long I'm going to be out of work.
Could be a couple of days.
A few days, could be a few weeks. I don't know, but keep doing. And then says, says that she committed suicide and to then say also that her emotional troubles and the mental health struggle she was having. And I was like, that is the strangest way
without
a church.
Just did a whole sermon,
right,
with jokes and all.
And look, and I didn't even see the whole sermon,
yeah,
right. And I'm glad I didn't, because that would have made me sick to my stomach. But how do you share with your parishioners that their first lady passed, and that's how you say it?
Mm-hmm.
Void of emotion,
right? Completely devoid of emotion,
void of compassion.
And then to also express to them, let me tell you, I'm going to tell you this news, and then, I won't talk about it.
Like it was a press conference.
Mm-hmm.
That's how he delivered it.
Yeah.
It was very strange.
Not like a man who just lost his wife.
I mean, that same sermon, he was completely removed, taught, did his sermon just like any other day, was cracking jokes throughout the whole thing, and then, gave the last little bit of 10 minutes left or whatever of the service to say, oh, you guys knew she was she was struggling mentally. It was self-induced. She died. It was self-induced. Y'all pray for me and my family, and be hush hush about this.
And make sure you keep contributing.
And make sure you keep contributing to the church. Keep coming to the church. It was very strange, and it reminded me of Chris Watts, that interview after he had died his family, where he was like, "Oh, it would really mean a lot if you could, help us find my wife and kids." And it was like no emotion at all. It really reminded me of that whenever he was preaching and laughing and carrying on, and then saying, "Oh, she took her own life last night. Say a prayer for us and see you later."
And let me just tell you, if there's any TikTokers that are listening to this, God bless you. I appreciate you so much, because you guys have been like the detectives that we all need and everybody deserves.
Yeah.
And that Mica definitely deserved and didn't get, because people in the community have really been contributing to figuring out what happened to Mica Miller and why. And so we learned that that night after the sermon, he's out having martinis with a woman.
Mm-hmm.
The night after announcing that the day after his wife died, right?
Mm-hmm.
She had just filed for divorce 10 days prior. She had paid for her car insurance the day before.
Yeah. So many weird things that don't add up.
And she has no connection to Lumberton, North Carolina, but she goes to Lumberton.
Mm-hmm.
And then we later learned from is it Robeson County? What is it?
Yeah.
Robeson County. Robeson County Police, that she makes a call to 911 and says, I'm going to do you have a location of where I am? And they say yes. And she says, I'm going to take my own life. And I want someone to be able to find me. That way my family will know what happened. And she had told people for months, if something happens to me, it's not an accident and I didn't kill myself. He did it. Many believe that the voice, now we know with AI, there are all kinds of things we can do with AI. And one of those things is we can mimic a voice with just a little recording. Justin actually uses this in our practice with translation. He can even make his voice speak Spanish, because he does not well anyway.
Out of him like that.
I am about him. And he can make his voice speak Spanish with a Tennessee accent, which
it sounds just like him, just like his voice,
right,
in Spanish.
And we know all this can be done, and those are the things that were alleged. Mica's family asked for an autopsy, because that is not automatic with a suicide, which is unusual in North Carolina. And J.P. Miller would not allow for a autopsy to be done.
Mm-hmm.
And he also was kind of leveraging her family.
Yeah, he wasn't letting them see her body for initially,
And he got her body cremated very quickly.
Mm-hmm. Yep. The whole thing is so strange, and I think it's blown up so much because, number one, Mica, anybody who knew Mica or, was Facebook friends with her or whatever, was just this ball of love. She was just a very kind soul. And I learned more about her through this, of people coming, with their stories of her. And she was like the lady who visited the old people and just spent time with them and took them, a cake, or if somebody had surgery, she would visit with so-and-so. And she was just constantly doing things for others. And so, number one, I think people are just infuriated that somebody that is this beautiful, kind, loving Christian woman, they're trying to stick up for her, because nobody was sticking up for her in the moment. But also, there's all these very strange factors coming out about JP and his history of abuse with other women, about his father, who also had abuse. Apparently JP was abused by his father. Again, we see the cycle of abuse there, but also nobody wanted or wants to believe that this is a suicide. I don't know if it is or not. We don't know, but it's been ruled a suicide.
I think we can all wrap our mind around a woman feeling like she had no out, right? Because now we see, we've seen body cam footage or police reports where she's begging for help, and police are like, oh, there's nothing we can do. Him threatening her. We now learned that there was a certain police officer and that was very high up at the police department that was like his best friend. And he uses that as leverage in text messages and emails to her. Like, you won't have a voice, essentially. No one will believe you because of this friend. And that was also a parishioner in their church, willing to cover up and do whatever it takes is what he's acting like. You know, whether that's true or not, I don't know. But he was using that relationship to make her feel like that was the case. But and then you see her, you see police reports and stuff. They're like, well, you know, it doesn't amount to criminal. He had trackers on her car. He would
slashed her tire,
took her purse, right? So he has her committed into from what I understand, he has her committed into a mental hospital.
Involuntarily. He has her involuntarily committed to a mental hospital.
Which is actually very hard.
Very hard.
To involuntarily commit something.
Very, very, very hard.
And to be able to do that
makes him very powerful. Yeah.
Interesting.
Makes me believe that there is some truth that he can pull some strings.
Yeah. You see that he has this relationship with an attorney in town who is helping him do these things. And he's also using that relationship, that friendship. And I think that he also goes to church. At that church, whether or not it's true or not, she sure believed it. That this was giving him more power to control her. And so we can all wrap our mind around someone who feels like no matter what, I can't get away from him.
There's no way out yet.
That there's no way out except, you know, I'll just go to heaven, right? Like, I understand how that can happen. But where I think the world can probably understand that. But where they can't quite wrap their mind around is all the circumstances that just the pieces of the puzzle don't go together.
A ton of red flags.
Right. So where she committed suicide is near water.
It's at the Lumbee National State Park.
And the water in this area, I drive through there every time I go home to North Carolina to see my parents. This is not water that has a current. It's stagnant water. Her body is found 130 feet way down from where she was shot. Her father has come out and said that he visited the site and they found a bullet in the tree and casings that were never taken into evidence at that landing where she supposedly killed herself. And for it to make sense, she would have had to have waded out in the water to get there.
Yeah.
Because there's no current.
Weird.
We wouldn't just float there. And the thing is when you don't have anything to hide, then why are you fighting the truth so hard? So why fight the autopsy? Why fight her family seeing her?
Well, and he tried to get into her apartment like 3 days after as well. And the apartment manager stopped him and said, "Nuh-uh, I don't like you. You're not getting in here," and called the cops.
I love that manager.
Yeah. I mean, just so many weird things. And I think, too, for people who knew Mica, so she had a Facebook prior to all this when her and JP were together. They had one of those joined Facebooks where it was like Mica and JP Miller. So it was not her own.
That's
it was
normal for 60-year-old people who don't really know how to navigate Facebook in the very beginning.
Because it's always the wife's Facebook.
Right.
Name.
Right.
Or sometimes it's like my parents. You know, if you've had some trust issues in the past, you know, you might create that just joint account. But they had a joint account. And then after, you know, she went away to the mental hospital, got out, and then was getting back on her feet. She was secretly staying with this elderly woman that was a good friend of hers who was kind of hiding her for a little while she got back on her feet. And then she got an apartment. And then back in, like 2 months prior to this, I think it was February, she started her own Facebook page. And so I had gotten a Facebook friend request from her. And so she was kind of adding back all of the previous people that you know, that I guess she wanted to from her previous profile. And it was just all about like uplifting everything that was getting posted in the present day, the last couple of months, was all scriptures. It was all just, you know, you could tell some things she had learned while she was in the hospital, where she was saying, did you know that these neurons in your brain create this type of response? And if you do this, a smile a day can really do this effect. Hugging. I know there was a post that I shared on my profile. She had posted about how hugging yourself does something for your brain and gives you comfort and stuff. And so I remember that day I had actually done that. I was like, oh, let me try. Let me hug myself. And I wrote back and said, you know what, that really did feel good. And she said, see, thanks. I'm glad it helped you too. But it was just all, posts like that were very uplifting posts. There was one that was more of a serious post about abuse and what she would say to other people who were victims of abuse. And I know that video gets shared a lot of kind of there's some things she says in there about, if people make you take drugs, or if they make you, do this, or if you have sexual abuse, and so people could kind of like connect the dots that those were happening to her. But otherwise, I mean, everything was just so a person who was like trying to get back on their feet, all positive, hopeful, optimistic posts. And so for a lot of people, when this happened, that like raised a red flag too. Like, why? She had so much hope. She had so much desire to live. She was going to do X, Y, Z. She was making all these encouraging posts. But I know that there's a theory that, kind of what you said, that no matter what you do, you can't get away. And the amount of stuff that he probably had on her, videos that are, damaging and
blackmail, right?
Blackmail type stuff, that the thought was maybe she just had too much shame to bear, maybe there was just too much shame there as this, beautiful, wonderful, loving woman who's she's fighting to get back on it. And he's probably just constantly pulling her back. Well, I'm going to post this. I'm going to post that.
He did this. He posted a naked picture of her, right?
Yep. It was a topless. It was a topless shirt. He posted it for like an hour and then took it down.
Did he?
But it was out there. He did. Yeah.
It's in text messages where he apologized.
He apologized.
I took it down.
Yeah. I did it. Sorry. I was really mad.
Love bomb, right?
You were saying bad things about me.
I did something horrible to you, but I love you so much and I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
That's what you see in cycles of abuse.
Mm-hmm.
Makes me sick.
So, yeah, there's a lot of things. Now, the police are really opening this case wide up as far as releasing the audio from her 911 call, releasing the surveillance footage from all the different places, the gas station, where she bought the gun at Dick's Pond, all the things. Is that normal for a case that so much would be available for the public eye?
Well, if they've closed the case, then it's all public knowledge. And also, so Robeson County does not have a great track record as being just good people in general. They've had so many officers indicted for doing some of the most horrific things, planting evidence and taking evidence and like drugs and being involved in gangs and being paid off and all this stuff. And a bunch of them have been indicted by the feds and all that stuff for a long time. So I think that I think they're trying to overcome that. Because public perception of that department is nothing.
Not good, yeah.
Yeah, it's less than nothing and only negative. And so they want to be as open and honest about everything as possible. So they know that we're doing the right thing is what they're trying to convey.
I also feel like they're trying to, I don't know whether it was suicide. It sounds like it was. And I think we can all wrap our mind around, especially you see Mica try to get out so many times and you see it fail.
Yeah.
Right. She filed and then she dismissed it and what happened in those moments. And so as she was trying again and she was really on this positive, coming out and she saw that failing again.
Yeah.
The alternative of being stuck in this,
it's
going back there, can switch. And so, and that's just suicide in general. You see the happiest people.
Yeah.
It's always I can't believe they would do that.
Yeah.
And so,
but makes me think of Twitch.
Robeson County is really...
I've been thinking about them the whole time, too.
Right?
Yeah.
People you wouldn't expect. Yeah.
Right. Just, and the social media is fine, and it's not what you think it is, and then all of a sudden, it is. Yeah. And there was a breaking point that no one would ever know about. And I think Robeson County is really... Everything they've released has supported...
Suicide. There's
suicide in their kind of narrative, and I think what would really support it would be to release all of it. But at the same time, I understand Mica's family has been so active in this.
Oh, yeah.
And thank God, because I think I'm going all over the place, but my reaction to, or not, it's all speculation, right? But I think that with JP and his just like press release it to me felt like anger. And that like if this blows up, because right, he's not just being investigated, or he was investigated until they ruled it a suicide, but also financial crimes, and the FBI is involved now.
Yep.
And his congregation, and having to explain things, and he had already been in situations where he was explaining things away. That it was like, if this is a suicide, if I think her crazy and this is a suicide, it ends here. Where her family coming out and saying what they did really brought this conversation to the level of she was abused. Right? It's more than just she killed herself, and she wasn't just crazy. And if he had it his way, no one would have asked any questions after that. The TikTokers wouldn't have went crazy.
Yeah.
Her sisters didn't start making those videos.
Oh, yeah. She's had so many rally behind her. Absolutely.
If these allegations of abuse are true, and I believe women, right? I believe her. Then he is responsible for her death. It's just,
That's what they're saying.
It's just not direct.
They're saying whether she pulled the trigger or not.
Yeah.
It's him. He killed her, you know?
Yeah.
So, and, you know, going back to the AI, so there's a lot of theories, right? You know, and I do feel like nobody wants to believe that is what happened, that Mica did commit suicide.
I think no one wants to believe that we as a community allowed it to happen. So
Yeah.
I think that church is just, if you're a member of that church, how are you not looking like, how did we allow this?
Yeah.
And I think and that's where we struggle, and you'll see Amy probably will cry as I'm saying this, but how do we allow this in our community at all to anyone? Like, how does it get to this?
Because even when you're sitting here and you're telling me how much of a light she was, how kind she was, the things that she's doing in the community, how she's going to elders' homes and taking care of them, and she's baking the cakes, and all that I can think in my mind is how did this beautiful light, this beautiful soul, be living in such despair to feel so unsafe that she thought there was no way out.
Yeah.
To cry out for help to the legal system and not receive the help.
Right.
You know, but to have so many loving family members behind her and to still feel alone. And that's
Wow.
the scary.
Because she was, and that's hard to accept that it actually happened.
It is.
And that she didn't call us.
Yeah.
Or that, you know, that she really felt that was it. And I think as a community, in our own community, this happened at a church. This happened, and you go back and she was posting videos that were uplifting, but she was also talking about abuse in those videos.
Yes.
And those ones just went on like, did nobody feel like they could say anything?
Well, if nobody's going to believe the angel of a human, right? If nobody's going to believe the woman who goes and volunteers all of her time and is so giving and selfless, she's white, right? If nobody's going to believe her, then what's the chances of anybody else ever getting believed?
Yeah.
It feels like despair.
Well, and I think the perception of her speaking about abuse was that it was something that had happened before, that she was now overcoming.
Right.
Yeah. And so, and I know even when she was in the relationship with JP, there was this hush hush about it, where she was even telling family members, you know, if you can't respect my husband, like, we can't.
It's isolation.
We have a relationship.
On the box of abusers,
you know,
they isolate.
Exactly. So he was isolating her, and she was trying to be the good wife and you know, yes, husband. So I think a lot of it did go under the rug, even by Mica, you know, even with her trying to hide a lot of this stuff. But again, if he was making her do all these horrible, heinous things, you know, with prostitutes and whatever, I mean, I'm not going to want to put that on display for everybody.
Especially not, and this is where I think for me becomes most offensive, is doing it through the church.
Absolutely.
Because she went to that church since she was 14 years old or maybe younger. And so you're learning that I need to be a good wife, and that's it. That's what he was preaching.
Yeah.
And so that's instilled in you before the abuse even happened.
That's the grooming, right?
Yeah, your husband, you're supposed to revere your husband, and he's all knowing, and all of that really set himself up to be. And he, not only is he her husband, but he is the person who's supposed to be speaking through God, who she believes in, and telling her these things and telling everyone these things. Makes it so much worse. Those sermons are really hard.
Very
hard to watch.
Very. I mean, he's putting her business on display too, multiple times. I had somebody who went to that church, and whenever I saw her again, it was only, you know, maybe a day or two after we had all found out that she had died, and she said, "Do you know about Mica?" And I said, "Yeah, I know about Mica." And I said, "How do you know about Mica?" And she said, "Well, JP told us." This was before his video started circulating. JP told the church. And I said, "Why would he do that?" And then she was kind of like, "What do you mean? Why would he do that? We all knew what was going on." And I said, "Well, what do you mean? I don't know what's going on." She said, "I know you don't know what's going on, but Mica hasn't been well for months. She's got mental issues, and she was cheating on JP and all these things." And so his church was very much behind him.
It sounds like he was grooming
the church,
congregation.
Brainwashing. Absolutely. A lot of them have flipped. I will say, since a lot of this has come out, a lot of those church members have left. They've flipped all the things, but in the middle of it, how are you not going red flag, red flag, red flag?
I was in the hospital 2 weeks ago with a kidney stone, okay? And my husband didn't even tell anybody, unless he had to.
Yeah.
Like, you just don't do that. And the thing is if
That's private, so private.
If someone is telling you that telling you that their wife, like I said, this goes back to like the circle of violence. When they're telling you that their wife is crazy, that is the biggest red flag ever. And they're putting all of her like most intimate details of like her mental health and all the things that is happening in her life, and he's talking about lithium and all kinds of crazy stuff, then that tells you that something is wrong.
His moral character is off.
Purpose is done.
Post a topless photo of your wife.
Well, and he had even said, "Oh yeah, well when my wife was at the mental hospital, I went through her phone and I found 18 messages from people saying, 'Hey, if you ever need to talk about your husband in private, I'm there for you.'" And he said, 18 people. He said, "You guys are out here talking bad about me, and I'm saving children in Africa." I mean, it just blows my mind. And the fact that there's church members who heard that and still stay.
Allegedly saving children.
Even imagine following a pastor like that.
Why did David get up and walk out?
Yeah. How did they get there, and how long had had they been groomed for so long? And what?
Who hears that and thinks kind of you sound that's normal?
But when I was a part of the Southern Baptist church for a long time, and now we know that there was this like rampant sexual abuse just in the background in the Catholic Church.
Right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
The Catholic Church seems like that's something that happens over there, in the South, right? But like we know that it's rampant. It was rampant in the Mormon Church. It was rampant and so when people are using religion as their conduit, and then they're covered, like it's all like so incestuous, so skeezy, so gross, and they're doing it in the name of Jesus, and it absolutely makes me sick. And I just want to
because people are a little bit more trusting of those individuals. These people are supposed to have the highest moral character. They are supposed to know the Bible through and through and try to live their life as examples of that. So for somebody like that, who is supposed to be preaching God's word, you're a little bit more trusting of them. So for someone like that to do any heinous
they know that the people who believe them are more vulnerable too.
Yeah. It's just, for me, it's just like another level, and biblically, teachers are held to the highest standard in God's eyes. So biblically speaking, the people who will be, in the eternal fire forever and ever are the people who are false teachers who are supposed to be bringing people to Christ that are giving them the wrong information. The Bible says that those people will be judged the harshest. So for these pastors to know this, they know
Praise
this,
the Lord.
And they still do that, even more blows my mind. I'm like, okay, there's no saving you.
They don't really believe what they're preaching. Because if you did, you wouldn't do.
Well, they're above that. They're above God.
Because you know what steps in? Ego. Ego is talking.
Yeah.
And when you watch his sermons, it's all ego.
It's all about him.
Yes. It's not about Jesus. Trust me.
Even that last sermon where he announces Micah's death at the end of it, the very first, 20 seconds or so, he's talking normal, making jokes, blah, blah, blah. And one of the things he says, he's like, "Oh, I know that there's a lot of Catholics here. So maybe you can finish this sentence, recite this thing." And he says some sort of scripture, and they all, a lot of them chime in and finish the scripture. And he said, "Well, I hear a lot of the women, but you women all like to talk. So I know that I'm going to hear the women." Even little things like that. I'm like, why are these people not picking up on this? Just that little thing would bother me.
Microaggressions. Yeah.
"Oh, you women like to talk, so of course I'm going to hear y'all."
What does that mean?
Okay.
it's just kind of like that group grooming.
Yeah, and it was constant comments like that
about cults and how that people can fall into that, mass groups of people. It feels kind of like that, where it was happening, but they didn't even realize
it wasn't even red flags. It was like banners, red banners, and no one stopped and did anything. Yeah.
Well, and you know, obviously, I can't remember the age gap between them. It's over 10 years. But, you know, JP was married and Mica was married previously, and they both cheated on their spouses with each other. And that was kind of how they got together in the church. And the church really disbanded when that happened. I mean, there was a massive issue within the church where half the people left, they were condemned, and then they had to kind of like apologize and work back to get back to normal and rebuild. And then they got married and all the things. But, you know, in a way, I find that telling of how they even got together. I mean, he groomed her, then he cheated. I mean, he had 4 kids at the time, cheated on the spouse, got with her. And even the ex
had a 15-year age gap.
So, yeah.
I mean, he has a child that's 25.
Yeah. And even the ex has plenty of police reports where she's filed on him, you know, allegations of abuse and other weird things. So,
from my understanding, she's cooperating with police and her family to be able to help,
which is awesome.
Yeah.
She's tried really hard to stay out of all of this, which is understandable. But yeah, she is.
I saw their wedding announcement.
Yeah.
Her bridal. And she looks just like her.
She looks just like Mica. How weird is that?
Because Mica's a very beautiful woman.
Exotic look.
Very different. Right.
Yes.
Like it's not like me. I'm just like, you could see my face 100 times.
Mm-hmm. She has a very exotic look.
Very.
And so did the previous wife.
Yeah.
Wife.
Spitting image of each other. It's wild.
Well, and when the video footage came out from Dick's pawn shop of her buying the handgun that she used to commit suicide, there was, again, all these allegations of, well, that's not really Mica. That looks like the ex-wife. And so it's been just bonanza with all the theories coming out, like the AI thing. A lot of people, they hear her call into 911, and some folks are saying, well, that's not Mica. That sounds AI generated to me. You know, my stance on that is, yes, AI has come a long way and we can make voices sound like people, but I don't know that there's the capability to do a live AI conversation. There is.
Get Justin to do it with you. It'll blow your mind.
My mind's already blown just from you saying that.
He had it worked out. It's not his voice. He didn't do it with his voice yet, but he had it worked out where you can't. They passed a law where you can't do it, but it will make a phone call and it's all you ask a question, it will answer it.
Oh wow!
Based off of you give it a subset of information and it will answer the questions that are asked.
It's
wild. It's absolutely wild.
That 911 call is very sad to me.
It's the place where, TikToking with the best of them, where she killed herself. Is that where? I read that it was where women go to kill themselves.
Wow, I don't know about that. Interesting.
Nobody got.
I know it's kind of a secluded place.
A secluded place where it's like known that women go there to.
Well, and it was found on her phone that she searched national parks near me, and that was the closest one that popped up. Because I know initially everybody was like, what's she doing in North Carolina? Like, why?
Yeah, and I think people who don't live here don't realize that it's not.
It's not that far, but still, it's like a 45-minute drive to cross over the line. And
it's like an hour and a half drive.
Well, yeah, 2 hours. An hour and a half. To the line where kind of like Highway 9 crosses over into Lumberton really isn't that far, depending where you are in.
Well, I guess from our house.
Yeah, depending where you are. I think from where she was, it was only about 45 minutes. And but when it came out, it was like, and I have a police officer friend who said it's just so weird because she was in her work clothes. Just that everything about it just doesn't sit right with anybody.
She also they have released there's video footage of a gas station right near there.
Yeah.
And there is a black F-150 that follows her from the gas station that like does a U-turn in the middle of the road to turn around, which is really weird.
Yeah. There's just so many things about this
Investigator, maybe
they've kind of closed the case on her death, and it's kind of like done that it's ruled a suicide. But the FBI has been brought in to kind of investigate JP further because he has all these claims of not only abuse, but money laundering, all these weird properties.
Anytime I see a rich preacher, my spidey sense.
Yeah. He's getting this money.
Right. And especially when you see preachers who own bars.
But preachers who have their own church.
Weird.
Yeah, he was part owner of Crocodile Rocks,
which is weird.
which is a bar. Yeah, and I think since all this has happened, he's gotten rid of that, his share of that. But it is strange.
On paper.
Yeah, on paper, true. So yeah, the FBI has been brought in to kind of investigate all of his dealings, and there's just so many still coming in.
So many allegations.
Yeah.
Well, and then we've learned that his dad has a really, really like checkered, crazy background of histories.
Where is he from?
Of abuse and all kinds of stuff.
Is he from here?
Yeah, I think they're from the Florence area.
Okay.
They've been here for a long time.
Yeah.
His dad had a Bible college, which is that the original Solid Rock? Is that what it was?
So yeah.
I remember representing some kids on a speeding ticket from like, not Uzbekistan, but it was something like that. They were here on a J1 visa. I think that's what it was. And they were going to school at that Bible school, but it really wasn't, they weren't really going to a Bible school. It was weird. I remember them telling me about it. Well, I mean, I don't know that for sure, but when I said, oh, what do you do? And they explained it to me and just sounded really not like a school.
Yeah, so the father of JP, who was a pastor, is alleged to have taken in all of these J1 students and basically abused them, sexually assaulted them, given them very little to live off of as far as food and money and just resources. They thought they were coming here to go to the Bible school, but the Bible school was kind of a front, and they weren't really doing a whole lot at the Bible school. So, and then there's, pedophilia accounts and, allegations that JP was also, assaulted by his father.
Allegedly.
Yes. And so there's a lot coming out about his dad and his dad's connections. And, the dad went over to Pakistan and was trying to be shady back in Pakistan. And so there's videos from Pakistan calling out the dad.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Right.
And so there's just so many aspects of this whole thing. I mean, JP is said to, on a side note, JP is said to have already had a relationship with another woman that's been going on for 6 months or more.
And her husband died.
So much. Her husband was bound to a wheelchair.
He was a quadriplegic.
Yes.
And from what I understand,
he drowned in a pool.
He drowned in a pool. And he went there alone in a wheelchair, and somehow only in his pool by himself.
I'll call her a mistress.
It was like the neighborhood pool.
Onto a pool for it.
Right. It's very weird, and that was ruled a suicide. But now they're looking into that because that was supposed to be during the time that she was having an affair with JP. So there's just so many angles coming in. I mean, and they just keep finding more. Every day there's a new piece of evidence that's been released.
For a new allegation.
A new allegation, I should say. Some things are actual evidence. The police report that's been filed that's public. And then there's just a crap ton of theories. Yeah.
So the Department of Justice, the Federal Department of Justice, released a press release back in September of 2014. And it says, South Carolina man pleads guilty to fraud and foreign labor contracting, visa fraud, wage and hour violations. And it says, the Attorney General for the Civil Rights Division of the United States announced the day that Reginald Wayne Miller of Marion, South Carolina, entered a guilty plea into federal court. So he was convicted. He pled guilty to visa fraud and wage and hour violations. United States District Judge Harwell accepted his guilty plea and imposed a sentence according to the report.
So he was doing all that through a Bible school.
Right.
Yes. So that's where
and that is Solid Rock Church now.
Allegedly.
Evidence presented at the
He
hearing.
learned that he could use the church to manipulate.
Evidence presented at the hearing established that Reginald Miller knowingly recruited and enticed foreign students to attend the Cathedral Bible College where he was president. In doing so, he recruited them outside the United States for the purposes of employment at the school by means of false representation and promises regarding his employment. He made false statements, perjured himself. I mean, the list goes on and on and on about the things that happened.
Terrible. Terrible, terrible, terrible.
And he was sentenced to 5 years.
Done. I mean, yeah. And obviously that was in his name. He purchased that property, so then it went to JP. JP kind of took it over, and yeah.
And didn't he try to buy the old hospital somewhere in Marion?
Maybe. I'm not quite sure about that.
And then all these things came out because he was trying to buy it to build another Bible school. I don't know.
Well, and there's allegations that a private plane was given to the church And that's part of the FBI's investigation, I'm sure, is where's this plane? Like, how did this happen? Where are the funds for this? And, and Mica also had a charity. I forget the name of it, but she was very passionate about helping kids from Africa. And she did a lot of missionary work where she would go over there and help. And so she created a nonprofit for them. But everybody is saying now, again, I don't think there's actual proof out for this just yet, but everyone is saying that all of those funds were not going to kids in Africa, that JP was taking those funds. So when Mica first, had died, a lot of people were saying, oh, and we all know that he wrote her obituary, which was very strange. We can get to that in a second. But JP wrote Mica's obituary, and in there said, Mica really loved, these African kids that she was helping. So in honor of her, donate to this charity. And then people started looking into that, and then it was coming out, do not donate to that. That is going directly to JP.
For administrative, he's going to use it for administrative purposes.
Yeah. So, and going back to the obituary, I think for a lot of people, that was one of the first things that came out, aside from his initial sermon announcing it to everybody. Then that obituary was kind of the next thing people were talking about, because in the obituary, it says some really, sweet things about Mica. But I think what most people took from it was that it was like saluting himself. Mica loved her husband. She always gave him compliments after his sermons and said he was a great pastor. Like, who writes this?
She would praise her husband after each church service, telling him he was the best preacher in the world, even if it wasn't true.
Oh,
she also told him he was the funniest preacher in the world, even though that wasn't true either.
Ha ha ha.
Yeah.
Obituary is the best place for jokes.
What a weirdo.
So people took that away. Like, this is not representative of Mica. This is very strange that he has hijacked this obituary and kind of still made it about himself. So
no, I think it's right on brand, right?
Yeah,
I think it's right on brand.
Yeah,
a person who has ego issues.
Yeah,
and again, someone who just wants us to go away.
Yeah.
Amy, at the beginning of this podcast, you said, when I hear about this story, the first thought is, I wish she would have come to me. What would that have looked like? How could you have helped her if she came to you?
So, it just depends. I have women who come in all the time, and I tell them what we can do to help. But they gotta want it. They gotta be willing to. If you really want to get out, then we can help you get out. That might be helping you find an apartment. That might be getting, asking a friend to help. That does family law, that can volunteer their time pro bono. I like to sucker people into my, into the things that I take on. They're laughing because they're like, don't we know it?
Call all of our friends.
All the girls were like,
I think all three of us, there's one or the other in on a freebie. Like, I know this is your thing, so
this is my pro bono project.
And I'll do like a FaceTime, like group FaceTime, and I'm like, I got a case. And then everybody's help. Activate the girl squad.
Yeah,
we all jump in and help. Financially, I can help sometimes.
Just what Mica was already trying to do herself. She was trying to get that restraining order.
Yeah.
Sometimes to have a lawyer in those spaces.
Oh, 100%.
How to do it. It's tricky to get a restraining order. You've got to have the police reports and go in there. And so
I know that's standard
when you have your husband, when it's against your husband.
Yeah.
I hate to say it's not taken as seriously, but it just...
And the husband has a lawyer.
That's what it is, yeah.
A restraining order is, it's the law coming between a relationship. And when you go up there and it's your husband and people are going back and forth, it can just, this is a domestic dispute. Mm-hmm. This is not...
Take it up in family court.
Take it up in family court and not so... For if you're having issues like Mica was allegedly having, to have a lawyer help you
navigate that.
Budget in a way that it's not a family dispute. This is a matter of safety. To take that to court, and so the court sees it and everybody sees it is really helpful, and so we can help you take your problems and word it in the way that's going to get you out.
We see this story so many times of women from domestic abuse victims that try to go through the appropriate steps, but they say, well, they don't pay attention to it until it's too late. a lot of times we see that that husband kills the wife before any attention is paid to it. In this instance, we see that Mica commits suicide before any attention is paid to it. So it's unfortunate that
what's the plight of women?
Yeah, like when can we protect them before they die? You know?
Yeah. When do they have value? When do they get?
When is it taken seriously?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of the conspiracy theories and things like that. I'm not to be the true crime like pessimist here, but I just think what happened here is if it's just ruled a suicide, the internet sleuths stop investigating. They stop wondering about AI, and it just ends there. It's just another woman who was committed suicide because the system failed her, the community failed her. She had nowhere to go. And it just happened. It's just another woman that happened to. And then we close the book, and then it just keeps on happening and happening and happening. So I hope that even if this is, the FBI is going to investigate and they're going to rule it a hard suicide, or I'm sure they're going to look into everything, that doesn't stop the conversation.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't end. It doesn't end there. If it's a suicide, it's not over.
Yeah.
And I think that's what her family has really advocated
Yeah.
for. Either way, this was happening.
I do think that something that's unique about this is people are not dropping this. I mean, it has been ruled from the coroner that it's a suicide. It's a wound that, looks like a suicide wound.
They never checked her lungs for for water.
No, they didn't.
Anything. So that's why I think the Robeson County Police Department, they're releasing things that fit the story.
The narrative, yep.
Told, but there's a lot more in there. I'm not saying that the photos of her should be released to the public because that would be helpful for her family, but I would hope that the FBI is going to go get all that stuff and at least give a more final, we did investigate.
Yeah,
right now, knowing the autopsy is, we can't do that anymore.
Right now, Robeson County Police Department is saying that no, the FBI is only investigating JP for his separate crimes. They have closed the book on the suicide. They're not looking into that. But I feel like the story changes every day, so who knows?
And if it's intertwined, if the financial crimes are intertwined with his manipulation of Mica, because I can see a world where she knows that the funds aren't going to Africa, and that is a way to manipulate.
Yeah,
if she really did
and that's one of the theories out there for sure.
Taking the money from her charity, and that's manipulating her. And so it's all coming. It might all be inner.
Well, that's what some are saying, that she knew too much. She knew too much, and there are some who are still speculating that she was killed. That she was kind of forced out there and kind of made to do that. I don't.
Listen, nothing surprises me anymore.
It wouldn't surprise me.
It wouldn't surprise me. Yeah. My jaw stopped dropping a while back.
Yeah.
But my jaw still drops at those sermons. But other than that, it's not surprising.
Doing stuff in the name of the Lord.
Same. He even made Facebook posts saying how women need to submit to their husbands and be a very giving wife, and then put on there, "I'm so great," or "Thank you, Mica," or "I'm so grateful for Mica who's very giving."
What a sick.
And it was a sexual post. I mean, it was not made giving food and flowers and whatever. It was specifically about sexual stuff.
That's with me all the time.
Anytime I want. No, he was saying, ladies, you need to be, basically a sexual slave for your husbands. And thank God Mica is very giving in that way. How
crude, disrespectful, degrading to your wife, to women in general. I mean, it just,
and then to do all of this, and you're a person who goes up in the pulpit every Sunday,
right? In the name of Jesus,
right?
And telling other people to do it.
Okay.
I mean, there are lots. I mean, we talk about what the heck was wrong with the people going to this church, but on the flip side, because of all these stories coming out, there are quite a bit of stories of people who tried the church out, saw that was not going to be a thing, and did leave. And then there are other people who tried to call him out.
My people.
And goodbye, you're not welcome in this church. So he very much controlled the whole church. Anybody who would, tried to help out in different positions within the church, if they did not agree with what he was doing, he would fire them. So there are stories kind of all angles, like people who support him, people who saw the red flags and pieced out, people who were there and didn't know what was going on with Mica, but people that were there and knew exactly what was going on with Mica, that she was being groomed.
Something just hit me. Did y'all see the video of him laying in the grass?
No.
Pretending to weep? Oh, I miss my wife. Oh. And like some random person walking, like, I don't know if it was a Mark comment or what.
So for show.
No, they started recording it like, are you okay? Like, what is wrong with you? Because, you know, when I say the sound that was coming out of him, you know, you imagine like when you know someone who's lost someone, that ache and that wail that comes out of them.
Yeah.
Not that. It was the most
Like a cat wailing.
Yes. No, I like cats.
Yeah.
Oh, my wife. And you're like, that'll work.
The autopsy thing, not to like bring it back around.
Yeah, no.
You know, when people do commit suicide, if you're close to someone who's committed suicide, it's that first kind of like your reaction, Rainey. This person would never do this.
Yeah.
That's like the most common thing.
Sure.
Commit suicide. We didn't see this coming.
Sure.
And when it's someone that you love, you don't want to believe that's true. So it's like, I want the autopsy because it couldn't have been that they killed themselves. It had to have been something else. It had to have been an accident.
Yeah.
It had to have been something else. And so when you love someone, you're like, tell me it was something else.
Yeah.
And so for him to just
Right.
no autopsy and like rush her to being cremated is just so strange.
You're so right. That's how I felt.
Way to grieve, but when you see people, if you know people who've experienced this, that's not the way.
Yeah.
It was a roller coaster because when you first saw it, you would say, "Oh no, like I just saw you. You were so hopeful, so great, so wonderful, so like optimistic." And then you're like, "Oh, I guess everything was just too much for you," because you knew she had just gotten out of the mental hospital, or just at least at the very minimum, you know, she had just gotten over something, some sort of big life crisis. And so you're like, man, I wish, like, I guess it was just too much for her. But then when the JP stuff started coming out, you're in a weird, morbid way, you're like, oh, I hope that's what happened. You know, I hope that she didn't commit.
I hope she didn't feel that way. And especially closer, you're like, I can never imagine someone that I love not coming to me.
Right.
It's like you have that survivor's guilt.
Yeah.
That you want to prove wrong, that it wasn't that, it wasn't you. And so that is strange. The video is strange. That reaction after, even if it was a suicide, that's a strange reaction to a suicide of your wife.
Yeah. And for me, I think in a sense, for me at least, when I keep saying, you know, I think there's a lot of people who don't want to believe this was a suicide. I think part of that is because Mica became a little bit of like a symbol of hope. She had gone through all this stuff. She had gone to this, you know, mental hospital. She had been with an abusive partner. And she was just facing it all with such grace and such, you know, love, that I think she became a little bit of like hope for other people who had gone through that. And just like, we can overcome anything. You know, look at Mica, who's just her faith in the Lord and just being, and just kindness and everything is like, she can do it, I can do it type of thing. So when she committed suicide, I know for me, it hit me in a weird place because I was like, well, like, there goes like the hope in a way. You know what I mean?
Do you think that maybe also because so many churches, the majority of churches teach that suicide is the ultimate sin?
Yeah.
That you would go to hell. And I don't
Yeah.
believe that. I think that if you commit suicide, there is something that is wrong chemically, and you are so sad that you can't overcome it, and that you can't even think clearly.
I agree. I don't believe that now, but growing up,
That's what
really up until I've been told about a year ago, that's what I believe, because that's what you're taught, you know?
And I think that also for someone to love Jesus so much and to be such a light for God, the idea that she would put her eternity in peril, and her place in heaven in peril, that you can't.
Yeah.
Right. For the majority of the world, we've been taught that this is what happens. You're going to go to hell.
Yeah.
She would never not want to see
never
the face of
jeopardize
Jesus,
that. Yep.
right? So that couldn't be true. And I think that's a big part of it.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's a really good side point. Because that crossed my mind too. Is like, well, what did she believe? Did she believe that you definitely went to hell for committing suicide? Because I can't imagine her doing this if that's what she thought.
And because I think there was a video where she posted about divorce. She had that same kind of conflict with divorce, about how she knows.
Yes, the Bride of Christ video. Yeah.
That divorce, God does not favor divorce, but what does God think about abuse is what she said.
Yes.
And so she was struggling even before, this happened, she was struggling with the way her faith was intersecting with
Her life.
and how it was playing out. And I think maybe that betrayal of probably the same thing, the man who was supposed to represent the faith was doing things that were not consistent with that. And so, I mean, to be so young, to be hearing these things when you're 14 and to be kind of like indoctrinated, basically.
Yeah.
This is it. She had to be struggling, and she was. She put it out there that she was.
Oh yeah. Well, she absolutely was struggling, and that's, you know, JP's crutch, and also the fact that, oh well, she was off her meds. She's normally on her meds, and she got off her meds, and then, you know, doctors are kind of like, well, yeah, meds can really screw up your brain if you do that. So that's definitely possible, which it is true. But I definitely think that is being used as a crutch for her committing suicide. But neither here nor there. When she took a trip to Africa, one of her mission trips, she did kind of give a little bit of her testimonial and said that she had tried to commit suicide before. And she was telling, you know, she had a translator there, and she was kind of telling the story of, I was in a really low place. I got a gun. I held it to my head. I pulled the trigger, and the bullet was jammed. And she said, and that was God saving me. And so this was part of her testimonial that she was giving to these kids in Africa. But for me, that was very enlightening. Like, oh, she did try and commit suicide prior. So it made it a little bit more, you know, I don't want to say it made it more believable that she would do it again, but
Digestible.
But yeah, you know,
She had been with that.
it wasn't quite so out of nowhere that it would happen.
Well, I think if anything we haven't learned about the Mica Miller case is there are so many more questions than answers, right?
Yeah.
And that this isn't the end of the road, and that everybody out there in TikTok and YouTube world and in news and all these things and podcasts, they're all asking these questions.
Oh, yes.
And they're not going to stop until they get the answers. And I love that.
I know you guys are big fans of Mandy Matney, and I think that they've pulled her in to try and investigate some of this. Yeah. So, I mean, really, they're reaching out. I mean, Nancy Grace did a show on it.
Yeah.
And so this is really blown up. But yeah, we're right in the thick of it. So I know a lot more is going to come out.
Yeah. So stay tuned.
Yeah.
You're going to get a lot more of it.
Yep. So you guys can check out the lovely law firm, and obviously also reach out if you are struggling with domestic violence. You can chat with Amy, who's gonna walk you through what you can do and your options.
I got you, boo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can find the lovely law firm on any of your social media accounts: Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and of course you can head to the website justiceslovely.com, and you can give them a call, 843-839-4111. And you can check out some of our other podcasts as well.
Absolutely. Until next time.
When life gets up.